Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello there again. This time I'd like to talk about an article that I saw from the Daily Express, although it was widely sourced among other sites as well, that there's been a widespread Christ pilling among the Chinese population, to which extent the Chinese Communist Party is concerned about the stability of the regime, with around what was quoted 300 million Christians in China. The worry is unsurprising, as with the Roman Empire before it, Christianity is a grave threat to any state that has not embraced it. To unpack the assertions made in the article, I'm going to first analyse the article itself, and then give a short assessment on my expectations for such a matter, and then also take a wider look at Chinese cultural tradition to show the unsurprising compatibility of Christian values with ancient Chinese values, as asserted in the Dao De Jing, which is the foundational text of Taoism. Firstly, let's approach the news piece in question. Now, the most glaringly obvious part of this article is the numbers assertion, and it's pretty centered to the text. So 300 million is the number that they assert, but it remains entirely predicted, and it's not substantiated. It's just a predicted number based on the growth levels that are currently happening in China. The numbers that they quote as actual numbers of Christians in China right now stands at around 97 million. Now, one could debate this figure, because, as you probably know, the official state statistics that are published by the People's Republic are often inflated or suppressed fake government narratives, and usually to prevent widespread panic, and I'd therefore perhaps consider this number smaller than the realistic amount of Christians present in China at the moment. I'd support this based on a few personal understandings of living in China. The first is that the Chinese government is pretty overtly atheistic. Less so than the Soviet Union was, or other communist regimes, but still pretty atheistic. And it views any religion, especially those who are Abrahamic in lineage, as a deviation from the rigid and contained assumptions of the Chinese people. And as such, they're a strong contender for the current hierarchy and power structure that exists in China. Therefore, it seems pretty evident that they'd want to suppress the numbers of Chinese Christians because they don't want to cause any anxiety or chaos, especially for those in power. Secondly, in my own experience, the Chinese Christians will often retain personal, private, and often secretive attitudes towards beliefs, especially those of foreign origins. As the insular and protective nature that's present in what you'd call Chinese social structures, it often treats outsiders with pretty aggressive hostility, and that can range from open criticism, accusations that you're betraying Chinese culture, and it really, if you get the ire of the Chinese government, it can lead to violent ostracization. Now, under those circumstances, it seems fairly logical that most Christians that worship in China will practice it in privacy, which is probably why you see when you look up Chinese Christianity that the majority are not Catholics, they're Protestants, because it's a more private version of the Christian faith. Now, churches are also required in China to make note of any attendees. So if you go to a church in China, you're probably going to notice that you have to register to go to a church on the online app WeChat, which is pretty much used across this nation to keep tracks of everyone. This registration for the church is probably where they got this number, this 97 million. But I think that would be probably much larger than is stated, because there's a lot of underground churches in China, especially throughout coronavirus. Most of the Catholic Church have been forced to close, and so most belief is going to have to go on in private or behind closed doors. It's for both these reasons, then, that I can come to the assumption that this 97 million is probably smaller than what's suggested, but still it's not close to the 300 million that the article states the Chinese government's worried about. So now we've had a look at the numbers, I'm going to move on and show you why I think that Christianity is prospering so well by taking a look at traditional Chinese beliefs. and hopefully you'll see what I saw when I took a look at these texts, that the beliefs in these texts aren't necessarily at odds with Christianity. In fact, most of the beliefs are the same, if not maybe in a different word, maybe with an esoteric Asian stance on them, but they follow along the same lineage as the Christian values set forth in the Old and New Testament. Now, to do this, I'm going to take a look at a foundational text of Chinese traditional beliefs, written in the 6th century BC by the near-mythical scholar Lao Tzu. Now, to really emphasize the similarities, I'm going to read you some extracts from this. The text is called, as we know in the West, the Dao De Jing, but in modern Chinese would be called the Dao De Jing, and it's a seminal book with 81 short chapters, kind of like philosophical poetry that set forth the views of Taoism. Now here's some extracts from it that I chose to show you why I think it aligns with Christianity. Chapter 1. The Mystery of the Tao. The Tao that we can comprehend is not the eternal and infinite Tao. The names that we give are not the eternal and infinite names. Void is how we name the origin of the cosmos. Amplitude is how we name the creation of the things that fill it. Thus it is in the void that we can contemplate the scope of the Tao, and in amplitude is subtleties. These two have different names but a common source, and both are mysteries. They are mystery upon mystery, gateways to the infinite mutability of the Tao. Chapter 4. The Infinite Tao. The Tao is like a bowl that can be never emptied. Truly it is inexhaustible, the fount of creation. It blunts the sharp, resolves the tangled, softens the dazzling, settles the dust cloud. Truly it is unfathomable, and yet we know it is there. I do not know what gave birth to the Tao, but surely it precedes the sage emperors. Chapter 7. Self through Selflessness. Heaven is long-lasting, and earth is enduring. Thus, as it is, in itself long-lasting and enduring, but does not exist for its own benefit, the cosmos may endure. In the same way, the enlightened man may place himself last, but come first, and may neglect himself, and yet be preserved. It is in his lack of self-interest that allows him to fulfill his self. Chapter 21. The Origin of All Things. Great virtue takes its form from the Tao, and the Tao is vague and insubstantial. So vague, so insubstantial, and yet it has form. So vague, so insubstantial, and yet it has substance. So deep, so dark, and yet within is the essence of life. This essence is real, and within it is truth. Throughout time, the name of the Tao is constant, and through it I can discern the origin of all things. How can I discern the origin of all things? From this, from the Tao. Chapter 44. Ensuring longevity. Fame or health, which is more dear? Health or wealth, which is more worth? Gain or loss, which is more harmful? Excessive love carries a heavy price. Covetousness brings ruin. Recognize insufficiency and knowing when to stop, avoid these consequences, and ensures longevity. Chapter 58. Sharp, but not dangerous. If government is subdued, the people will be honest. If government is obtrusive, the people will be discontent. Misery and happiness are interdependent, and one hides behind the other. Who knows their limits? Without the orthodox, the unorthodox takes over, and good turns to bad. This befuddles the people with enduring confusion. So the enlightened man stands foursquare without causing harm, is sharp but not dangerous, is straight but does not overextend, shines but does not dazzle. Hopefully you can see why I chose these chapters, so that you can understand the similarities between Chinese tradition and Christian tradition. Most of the ancient Chinese traditions, especially religion and superstitious practices, was basically destroyed in the early and mid-20th century. And so I think the growth of Christianity, and obviously alongside that Islam as well, has just been an outside idea that has filled the void in Chinese culture and Chinese society. And you can see already in the news everywhere the way the Chinese state is reacting to this, which kind of shows its weakness already. The harsh treatment of the Muslims, the destruction of churches and mosques, shows that the Chinese state is going for harsh tactics to help protect its hold on Chinese society. But still, that isn't stopping the increase in numbers. Thirdly and finally, I'm going to take a look and a moment to ponder the wider effects of the increase in Christianity and Islamification of Chinese society. Modern Chinese society is pretty much at odds with my own English sensibilities, and if you spend more than a cursory moment in China, you'll realise why. But I'll give you a few here. The total lack of charitability. A lack of self-awareness and expectation that it is others' jobs to move out of your way. Selfishness in excess, that all things are acquired by those that ignore cues and push and shove to success. And this is only to name a few. 70 years of a socialist regime has cemented a culture of Darwinistic survival of the fittest, where the rude do what they wish and the polite suffer what they must. In such a climate, it proves difficult to uphold Christian values when all of the society seems to be pretty much at odds with them, and this is why I drew the comparison between the Roman Empire and the People's Republic of China. Neither of these states likes the sizable Christian minority, and both of them are using the strong arm of the state in a hope to quash them so that it does not affect the established hierarchy that exists. But in conclusion, I don't want to make a sweeping claim that Christianity will overtake the Chinese mainland or challenge the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese are very insular, their ways are theirs, and they keep their own group mentality. And you can already see in the West that Christianity is quite muted in the face of the Leviathan state. Perhaps the CCP has less to worry about than reported, but Christianity does have history on its side, and only time will tell. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very much.